really neat. She worked in the field. When I leave as a body donation, and so, we joked about that, and we don't joke about that anymore. Exactly. No, that's the one board game that I bought because I really enjoyed it until. Exactly. There you go. And she is. Oh, yes. Morning. She spoke here, the executive director of the park. She works in Oklahoma school. I had seen that in her bio. And so we looked, and it's fascinating. And I didn't have time last time we used to reach out to her specific about that. More is putting that out the schools and just
Bonjour, mes amis. Good morning and welcome, everyone, to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or watching from wherever you may be, you are welcome. I'm the Reverend Eric Meter, this congregation's lead pastor, and I'm thrilled to be with you all as we gather in what is truly the Great White North in December. Looks like the dreams of a white Christmas will come true again this year. And yes, I know that the World Cup final with Argentina playing France is just beginning as we speak. Thanks for being here. This morning, I am joined by our worship associate, Mary, as we welcome back Deirdre, who is leading us in our music once again. Welcome back, Deirdre. You'll notice that our young ones are somewhere else this morning having a great time. So instead of my lead in there, let me simply say, let us sing. Please rise as you are willing and able. And Deirdre, would you please lead us in singing People Look East, number 222 in your gray hymnal. Yes, we sang this last week, but this is the last Sunday of Advent, and starting things off without an Advent song would not feel right. Deirdre, please lead us.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. My name is Mary, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Whether you are taking part in this worship celebration from your home or wherever else you may be, whenever you may log on, you are welcome here. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and to all those that have the willingness to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this protracted pandemic. If you are new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you are right here in Worship Hall with us this morning and you would like more information about FirstU, it is available at the welcome table at the back of the pews, and Dory is there to greet you. And now here is Carl from our board to highlight our announcements for today.
Thank you, Mary. A few announcements from our religious exploration program. We now have a full team of volunteers for our kindergarten to first grade OWL program and also for our coming of age 12 to 14-year-old program. So registration is now open and forms are available in the EUU. So please promote this program amongst your families and grandfamilies and any families you know of in the area that might be interested. In addition, we have 2 volunteer RE opportunities. We're looking for mentors to support our coming of age kids and a few people who have experienced the Ministry PALS process so we can reintroduce that here in our congregation. Please email the Director of Religious Education, DRE, at firstunitarianottawa.ca. And finally, the youth group pizza party was rescheduled to this afternoon at 5:30 in room 6 downstairs. And our UU Pride group is inviting interested people to join and participate in planning for 2023. Again, see the EUU for details. And now I'll call on Donna to make our announcements for our Environmental Action Group. Thank you, Donna.
Morning, everybody. So Wednesday's the winter solstice, and we welcome the return of the light. So perhaps a winter solstice cafe would interest you, or maybe you'd like to celebrate Thriftmas this year. Take a look at all this and more in the Climate Action page. If you've not yet had a chance to protest Bill 23, ACORN is sponsoring a series of province-wide protests on Tuesday, the 20th, at noon in Ottawa. It will be at Lisa McLeod's office. If you're interested in this, see me, or if Ria's around today, she can give you information too. I particularly, am taking a holiday break for the next 3 weeks, returning mid-January, so I won't be around to give announcements. And from the EAG, the Environmental Action Group, we wish you a Christmas that is both merry and sustainable, and we wish you a new year where we find the courage to take action, to walk more lightly on our planet, and to share more justly with those who have less than we do. Merry Christmas.
We encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our webpage for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be full as ever, though as global health challenges continue, many of our activities still take place online. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today we are part of our spiritual community. Welcome.
Mary, Deirdre, Nana, Carl, thank you. We light our chalice this morning to these words adapted from those of Mark Bellatini. And so, without guarantees, we lean into joy and bend toward a just way of life, both for our own sakes and for the sake of the children and all beings with whom we share the earth. We would engage our mission wholeheartedly with courage, self-questioning, compassion, vulnerability, and honesty. Our chalice is lit. Come, let us worship together. And we'll start with a story for the day from Nao.
Hi to everyone, it's Nao, your Director of Religious Exploration. I hope everyone's doing really great today. Today I'm sharing with you a short children's story titled It Takes a Village, written by Hilary Rodham. Sometimes it takes a child to make a village. All people have a place in the village, a job to do, and a lot to learn. Kids don't come with instructions. but neither do grown-ups. Every child needs a champion, or two, or three, or more, and the right tools to get the job done. Every family needs help sometimes. Kindness, sharing, and caring matter. Playing matters too, and resting, because the world is in a hurry, but children are not. The village needs every one of us to help and all of us to believe in each other. Children are born believers and citizens too. Let us build a village worthy of all children. I hope you all enjoyed that short story by Hilary Rodham. I just want to let everyone know that we're bringing Mystery Pals back. So starting March 1st, for 2 to 3 months, we'll have Mystery Pals going on at the church. This is a great opportunity to create connections among different generations within our church. So what happens, for those of you who don't know, is that an adult is partnered with a child or youth within our church community, and they deliver a note, a letter, or an art creation or some homemade item each Sunday morning to their mystery pal. If you're interested in signing up, please send me an email to dre@firstunitarianottawa.ca. The sign up will end February 15th, and we hope to kick off Mystery Pals March 1st. Wishing everyone a very happy Sunday.
Friends, even though we don't have children right now to sing out to their activities, let's sing anyhow. It still does the body good. Deirdre?
Beneath our arms we shelter you. You warm our hearts as you pass through. May our love guide you as you go, to help you learn and help you grow.
The centering words this morning are very short but very meaningful. They're by Anne Frank. I can feel the suffering of millions, and yet if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must uphold my ideals. Perhaps the time will come when I shall be able to carry them out.
Each week at this time, we pause in recognition and appreciation for the moments of joy and challenge and sorrow in our lives. We do so by placing a stone in a bowl of water. You can see the ripples, and if they could, they would expand. In fact, they do expand through us here and out into the greater world. This morning, a belated stone, or a stone for belated birthday wishes. Someone here sitting right there named Ed celebrated his 80th this week. We may have dropped a stone for you yesterday, Ed, but a week ago, you get 2 stones. You're worthy of 2 stones. Here, have a third. This coming Wednesday marks the 100th birthday of our own Helen McSee. Helen, congratulations A solstice baby. How wonderful. And a stone for a milestone gift in the realm of human development and science for the physicists and engineers at the Lawrence Livermore Lab in California. I used to serve in Livermore, spent my first 10 years of ministry there. I worked with people who worked in their fusion research program. They thought they were brilliant in everything, but they were at least brilliant in their science. A stone for concern that part of the continued fusion development will be private, not all public. And a stone, if I can get even a little more political, that this week Iran was removed from the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. And a stone for all the joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts this morning. Carrying cards for both Ed and Helen are available for you to sign at the back of the hall. Even if you don't know them, your name on a card signifies your appreciation of what they have given to this community to make it as vital and caring as it may be. So please, if you haven't already, please sign each card on your way out of the hall today. I keep reaching for stones. I must like this. A stone to move us into a time of silence before Deirdre brings us back together with the sound of music.
The reading today is from The Roots of Empathy by Mary Gordon. And just kind of an aside, it was interesting, Ann Nagy came up to mention that she's familiar with this program. Unfortunately, it's not here in Ottawa. It is in Newmarket, maybe other places, but it's a wonderful program, so I'm pleased to read this item from The Roots of Empathy by Mary Gordon. In her book, Mary Gordon writes about how the Roots of Empathy program brings a parent and their baby into early elementary school classes to highlight the ways and importance of empathy. She writes, Roots of Empathy place babies in the role of teachers because babies love without borders or definition. Babies respond intuitively to love. They are blind to differences as defined by the world. It is only when young children learn from the adult world that some are more worthy than others because of some perceived difference that we see the unfolding of the intergenerational legacy of racism, classism, and a host of other isms. She goes on. Darren was the oldest child I ever saw in a Roots of Empathy class. He was in grade 8 and had been held back twice. He was 2 years older than everyone else and already starting to grow a beard. I knew his story. His mother had been murdered in front of his eyes when he was 4 years old. And he had lived in a succession of foster homes ever since. Darren looked menacing because he wanted us to know he was tough. His head was shaved except for a ponytail at the top, and he had a tattoo on the back of his head. The instructor was explaining to the class about differences in temperament that day. She invited the young mother who was visiting the class with Evan, her 6-month-old baby, to share her thoughts about her baby's temperament. Joining in the discussion, the mother told the class how Evan liked to face outwards when he was in the snuggly and didn't want to cuddle into her, and how she would have preferred to have a more cuddly baby. As the class ended, the mother asked if anyone wanted to try on the snuggly, which was green and trimmed with pink brocade. To everyone's surprise, Darren offered to try it. And as the other students scrambled to get ready for lunch, he strapped it on. Then he asked if he could put Evan in. The mother was a little apprehensive, but she handed him the baby and he put Evan in, facing toward his chest. That wise little baby snuggled right in. And Darren took him into a quiet corner and rocked back and forth with the baby in his arms for several minutes. Finally, he came back to where the mother and the instructor were waiting, and he asked, "If nobody has ever loved you, do you think you could still be a good father?"
Mary had that reading by noon on Friday. I didn't think to bring Kleenex up here. I know I needed it as much as anyone. Thank you. There are some things in my life that I just have a weakness for. Things where my honed and trustworthy sense of disbelief jumps out the window without a second thought. Things I'm just a sucker for, in other words. Perhaps some of you have some of those things as well. For me, one of my consistent buttons for this are kids when they are wiser than their age, when they get to the heart of the matter and I realized I've just experienced a lesson in growing up myself. The reading Mary just shared with us struck me in exactly that way. Now, that honed disbelief is still in me. I've observed, and in the real world and also in my memory of my own childhood, and I've talked to enough parents to back up the observation that kids, even infants, can be, at times, some of the most manipulative creatures on the planet. This is known to you, I'm glad. Wouldn't want to burst any bubbles this early in the sermon. With that, I'd like to think that I've obtained or retained some semblance of objectivity. At least I like to think so. And then, several years ago, about this time of year, I came across a headline from the San Francisco Chronicle, the main daily newspaper of that city, from a few weeks before. Bat Kid saves city. Bat Kid? What was this? Well, seems the San Francisco branch of the Make-A-Wish Foundation went all out to grant a 5-year-old leukemia patient named Scott Miles to grant his wish to be Batman for a day. And folks in San Francisco rose to the occasion. 12,000 volunteers took part in making little Miles' wish come true. And as many as 20,000 lined the streets cheering Bat Kid on. Not one, but 2 Italian sports cars, Lamborghinis for those in the know, were turned into Batmobiles. Miles was in the first car, driven by a policeman. His parents were in the second car. Bat Kid freed the baseball team's mascot, who had been captured by the Penguin. He busted the Joker when the Joker was trying to rob a bank vault, and saved a proverbial damsel in distress from being run over by a cable car. To thank Miles for saving the city, the mayor presented him with a key to the city. Even President Obama took part, sending in a congratulatory video saying, "Way to go, Miles, way to save Gotham." The next day, the San Francisco Chronicle prepared a special section of their newspaper under the heading Gotham City Chronicle, featuring Miles and his crime-fighting prowess. What 5-year-old, I have to ask, even knows what being given the key to a city means? It was completely over the top, and it moved me to tears. It was so over the top that how all of this was going to be paid for became quite a fracas, until a wealthy individual sent the city a $10,000 check to cover the city's portion of the cost to have done with it all. But that's not what I want to talk with you about this morning. What I want to talk with you about this morning is this thing. Call it something hardwired in us, call it a cultural trope, call it what you will, but every now and then it is a child's voice, or at least the voice of someone who isn't normally seen as having much influence, that calls us, that captures our attention, calling us to be more than we were. In short, well, the adage we credit coming from the multi-nationed continent of Africa, that it takes a village to raise a child, as much as that is true, so is its corollary. It takes a child to raise a village. In story, it was a child, after all, who was able to actually say what everyone else saw, what everyone knew, that the emperor had no clothes. How often we've waited for that to be heard in the nation to our south over the last 6 years and more. And while that particular child may only be a legend, for real-world evidence, we need only look to Anne Frank from Mary's reading earlier, whose diary of living in secret rooms during Nazi occupation of Amsterdam captured the world's conscience. We need only look to Greta Thunberg, whose strident clarion call on behalf of our globe's environment brought the world's attention to the dangers of a climate crisis like never before. We need only look to Malala Yousafzai, whose gentleness and sage wisdom provided a stirring, striking contrast to the Taliban, who had shot her and left her for dead. These youth moved the needle. They didn't fix anything themselves directly, but they captured the attention of many across the globe, setting the bar higher than it had been. Now, I could move on from here to talk more about the roots of empathy from Mary's reading earlier, but we heard not too long ago from Katerina Price, the executive director of our neighbor, the River Parkways Children's Center, who had worked to help bring that program to Ottawa schools. And as important as the effects of programs like that are on children, what I want to talk about this morning the most is the village that is raised by the child. Seeing that the holidays are here, I want to give you something, lift up something that may be new to all of you. Cue the prop. Have any of you seen this before? 3-ring binder, pretty thick. It's been sitting on the bottom shelf of my bookcase since I arrived here. There are faces just under the nose and up of 2 Muppets. And then below that are the words Rakov Samsam and Shahara Simsim. Now, my Arabic and Hebrew are awful, I know, so please forgive what I'm sure is, or both are mispronunciations. This is a report of the first year of a joint Israeli-Palestinian collaboration from early November of 1999. Before they retired, former congregants of mine had worked for the Children's Television Workshop in New York City. The Children's Television Workshop are the Sesame Street people, although I understand the show has been called Sesame Park here in Canada for several years now. Sesame Street has long been broadcast around the world in any number of languages. There have been many nations in which local versions of the show had to face political challenges, but likely none as much as the joint Palestinian-Israeli show in Jerusalem. 50 half-hour episodes of the show were produced. Rakov Samsam and Shahara Simsim mean Sesame Street. Simple as that. The first of the show was aired early in the spring of 1998. The goals of the joint production were to teach tolerance and mutual understanding. 2 new puppets were created for the show, Dafi and Hanin. In one scene early on, Hanin is eating red grapes, and Dafi is eating green ones. They realize that both colors, both kinds of grapes are sweet. Suddenly, each of their mothers appear who tell them not to eat grapes before dinner. Hanin, don't you eat those red grapes. Dafi, don't you eat those green grapes. You don't want to ruin your appetite for your mother's cooking, after all. But the 2 realize that if they switch the grapes they're eating, if Hanin eats the green one and Dafi eats the red ones, they can continue to enjoy the grapes and obey the letter of their mother's law. That's what I would have wanted to do, and I'm taking it from some of you, some of the response. That's what you would have wanted to do as well. We really are the same all over the world, aren't we? Over the next year and a half, 50 episodes aired mutually on both Israeli educational television and Al-Quds educational television. Then, early in '99, at the release of this study, a research symposium was held at Jerusalem's I'm not making this up, American Colony Hotel. Truth in advertising, I guess. And I want to say that I preached this part of the sermon before back in the States, and I said exactly the same thing to them that I just said to you. Participants at the symposium included representatives from UNESCO, UNICEF, the Children's Television Workshop in New York City, professors from Northern Ireland and several United States universities, and representatives from both the European Union and Sesame Workshop and the Sesame Workshop partner in South Africa. This was a little something. There was effort behind it. Groups had made investments. And among the materials given to me, in addition to this 3-ring binder, were a few newspaper clippings. Jewish Community Online columnist Micah D. Halpern reported that the road to production was far from smooth. We can easily imagine that. But here he writes, news of the Israeli bombing in Cana, a refugee camp in Lebanon, reached the production meeting in New York City. A leader of the Israeli team commented by saying, "That's war. Children die." It was absolutely, and this is still quoting the article, it was absolutely the worst thing to say. In front of the Palestinian representatives, another Israeli team member rebuked the speaker and called those earlier comments, unacceptable. Children, he said, are never supposed to die. He's not wrong. Commenting on the project's evaluation, David Katab of the Jerusalem Post-Front reported that among those who watched the show, Israeli children seem to have changed their attitudes towards Palestinians in larger percentages than Palestinians changed their views toward Israelis. While many experts tried to explain this phenomenon, I have, says the author, little doubt that for the Palestinians, the negative political reality was so overwhelming that no television program could significantly alter it. Has the rings of truth to me. At the same time, however, Viva Press quoted Israeli executive producer Molly Walburn saying, "It was mission impossible back then, but with the outcomes we now have, I believe it will continue." Only it didn't. Not long after that big symposium, the joint Israeli Palestinian Sesame Street show was put on the shelf. I don't know who made the call. I expect money was diverted to other projects, but the jointly produced show was over. Israeli educational television went back to producing their own version of Sesame Street, keeping the Hebrew name Rakov Sumsum. And in 2002, Palestinian television aired the version they produced, Hakiat Simsim, which was revamped in 2007 under the title From a Decade Before. I remember hearing from a professor during my undergraduate days that politics is the art of the possible. Frankly, that has always sounded to me like something those in charge feel they get to say. In any case, the joint Israeli-Palestinian Sesame Street show was an inspired idea that didn't live long enough to make the difference that it could have. Not only in the children who may have watched it, but in their parents and the teams who had brought the show to life. Sometimes the road to peaceful relations is not seen as being in everyone's best interest. Sometimes building communities of equity and respect is not what the powers at be are working toward. Sometimes the interests of some are seen as more important than the needs of everyone. Sometimes, I dare say, villages do not want to grow up. It is important that we keep this in mind, even as we keep on doing our best to build a home deserving of everyone's needs. Even if we don't succeed, we are still called to do the right thing again and again and again. I don't think there's been any other follow-up evaluation to the joint Israeli-Palestinian Sesame Street. And as I said before, I'm less interested in the effects it would have on children. By and large, if things are planned right, those will be positive. I'm more interested in learning the effects of those producing the show. More than that, actually. I'm interested in what effect the joint show may have had on the culture and politics of Jerusalem. What would have happened to the sense that in war children die? What would have happened to the sense that children are never supposed to die? I'm not a psychologist or a sociologist. Statistics elude me. Ask my math professors. I can only guess at how to study these things. I only know how to ask questions and listen to what people are willing to share. Listen to their words and listen imperfectly to what may lie behind those words. What do you do when a village does not want to meet the needs of all its people? What do you do when a village does not take seriously the voice of reason and conscience from those on the margins? In the Christmas story, what happens is that something that took place far from the center of control is made central to the life of a people. A couple travels. She's pregnant. They're poor. There is no room for them in the inn. The woman is forced to give birth in a stable to a child. Her child must have been fussing, must have been cold. And that baby at the margins is made central, is made the most important thing, not only of his parents, but of a people. And Christianity, that underdog of a religion at first, concerned with the poor and widows, grew over the years to become the force it is now, in many ways wholly different than its beginnings, but always inspired by the story of its beginnings. Well, we've covered a fair bit of ground this morning, haven't we? From Bat Kid, saving Gotham City, representing adult desires more than that of any 5-year-old, to as Israeli-Palestinian tensions and relations, to a star reported to have shined above a humble stable in Bethlehem. I wish we lived in a world where Daffy and Hanin, those two Muppets from Jerusalem, were as well known as Bert and Ernie. I wish we lived in a world where the powers that be would say, our children need this, so we're going to bury our hatchets and make it possible for them. That happens sometimes, but rarely without great effort, rarely without the proverbial trinity of blood, sweat, and tears. Those of you who are part of the heroic efforts here to safely house Samsu Mia from Bangladesh and Sri Kumar Rai from Nepal, you know this. Those who raised funds and organized for the congregation to sponsor other immigrants and refugees, and who are doing so now, you know this. You know what it's like to have skin in the game when the outcome is far from guaranteed. You know that despite the disagreements and the heartache, you've helped create something new. Not just the outcome of those you striven to serve, but you've changed yourself as well. You are more than you had been before. And your village changed because of that, because you changed, and that you are not going to stop being deeply ingrained in that village. When changes one, changes many. That's what I celebrate this time of year. A village that strives to take on new challenges, to serve more than it has before, and grows as a result. Thank you. Amen.
This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We have been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among our pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another.
Good morning. I think we have slides. Yes. We are at the end of the 2023 pledge campaign. That could be thankful for some of us who have been with it for so long, but I want to draw your attention to the words at the bottom, being generously grateful. And certainly those in the pledge campaign wish to thank you very much for making our village a little healthier, a little more financially stable. If we go to the second slide, you will see from the 2023 campaign that we have actually eclipsed what our objectives were in both our performance participation. We're at 74%. That's up a bit over last year. And we are about 4% over what our financial target was. So both of those are trending in the right direction. So we have some thank yous. First of all, I want to thank Larry Numbers Jones, the man behind all of these numbers. Thank you, Larry. You can't imagine the amount of work Larry puts into this, really. I mean, he, along with Michelle, our financial manager, spent a lot of time really going through these numbers and analyzing these numbers and pulling them together. So Larry's responsible for collecting the pledges, doing all of the weekly analysis and providing the numbers, and the temperature charts that you see here. So some specific thank yous besides Larry. The Caring Network, they actually pull together the names of all of our members and non-members, and by the way, we count active non-members and others into our listings. So they provide knowledgeable support and the vetting of the mail-out list. Then we have people who stuff all the envelopes. So at the beginning, we send out a letter to all of you to let you know about the campaign, give you some updates on it. So we do have people who stuff those letters and those envelopes. We have people who make telephone calls. So towards the end, we do a lot of pledge calling. We have a dozen people or so who make those calls. And this year, we brought in about $30,000 based on those pledge calls. So we're trying to reach out to people that we don't usually see here. Michelle Jackson, Finance and HR Manager, supporting the team and keeping us focused on the straight and narrow. And first of all, or lastly, thanks to every one of you, again, who have pledged, who have committed to us on an annual basis. The last slide talks about what our model is for stewardship. And it isn't just the financial aspect, but it includes many other elements of what we talk about as being generous. And again, it very much leads into the sermon of the day that has to do with building our community and maintaining it. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Terry. And now, please rise as you are willing and able as we join together in singing our closing hymn before the winter solstice, Lady of the Season's Laughter, number 51 in your gray hymnal. Deirdre?
Lady of the season's laughter, in the summer warmth be near. When the winter follows after, teach our spirits not to fear. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning year. Sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay. Here among us till the far light of tomorrow's dawning ray. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning day.
Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our online fellowship hour will begin at 11:30. For those of you who would like to access fellowship hour here, you can do so in the lounge out that door and around to your right. There you'll be able to connect with all of those joining fellowship hour from home and have discussions with those joining in person. Looking a bit further ahead, we'll have our Christmas Eve service in this hall at 7 o'clock this coming Saturday evening. Before that, at 6 p.m., Mariella will be leading a carol sing-along here in this space. Welcome. Hope you'll join in the fun. We extinguish our chalice this morning to words adapted from those by Paul LaRue. Our time together is brief. Our understanding is partial. Our interconnections are tenuous. Though this be true, we learn through our struggles. We find support in our connections. We remind ourselves to savor the precious gift of each moment of life. This morning's chalice is extinguished, but the spark of our connections resides in each of you. Deirdre, will you bless us in song once more?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, cool the river, vide suori de justice, tenurimois, cielo pour toi, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi.
Folks, when I was standing there, I noticed a note that I had missed. I failed to drop a stone earlier. I want to correct that now. Our own Lisa B. has lost a mentor and dear friend, a woman named Amina, who passed away suddenly not long ago and whose funeral was yesterday. Life is precious. Joy is precious. And tears are but a sign that we have known love and that we are alive. As we prepare now to leave this space, may our hearts remain open and our minds remain clear. Hanukkah begins tonight. The solstice is this coming Wednesday. Christmas Eve is near. So let us do what we always do in helping the world come alive in friends, in love, and friends. Happy holidays. Go in peace. Go in joy. Go enjoying this beautiful weather we're experiencing now. Go in love, my friends. Go in love.